Some truths about human psychology are uncomfortable, which is exactly why most people avoid talking about them. Yet the patterns we refuse to examine are often the ones that quietly shape our relationships, our choices, and sometimes our emotional destruction. Today's video explores a psychological phenomenon that is rarely discussed with honesty. How repeated emotional and physical relationships can reshape the way attachment, desire, and stability are experienced inside the human mind. This is not a video about judgment. It is a video about understanding patterns. By the end of this video, you will understand why some people become addicted to emotional chaos rather than stability, how the brain's chemistry can slowly change through repeated relationship cycles, why certain individuals struggle to feel satisfied in calm, committed relationships, and most importantly, how recognizing these psychological patterns can protect you from painful relational mistakes. Many people enter relationships without understanding the invisible psychological forces that drive attraction, attachment, and separation. Those who understand these forces gain something powerful: clarity. Clarity about people, clarity about relationships, and clarity about the emotional dynamics that most people only realize after it is too late. Stay until the end, because one of the most important psychological insights about human relationships will appear in the final part of this video. Before we dive in, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Behind every repeated pattern in human relationships, there is always a hidden psychological mechanism quietly shaping behavior. At first glance, a person who moves through many emotional or physical relationships may appear confident, free, and in control. The attention, the excitement, the constant novelty, these can create the illusion of power and desirability. Yet beneath that surface, something more complex is often unfolding inside the human brain. Human attachment was never designed for endless cycles of connection and separation. The nervous system forms bonds slowly, but it also carries the scars of repeated emotional breaks. Each time an attachment forms and then collapses, the brain adapts a little. Not dramatically at first, but subtly. The emotional system begins to protect itself from pain in ways that most people do not notice while they are living through the experience. At the center of this process is a delicate biological system that governs attachment. During deep emotional and physical closeness within a stable partnership, the brain releases a powerful hormone known as oxytocin. This chemical is responsible for feelings of trust, warmth, and emotional safety. It is the same biological signal that strengthens the bond between a mother and her child, and it plays a central role in long-term romantic attachment. When intimacy occurs within a committed, stable relationship, this hormone reinforces the connection each time it is released. Gradually, the emotional bond grows stronger. This is why couples who build their connection patiently and respectfully often report a deepening sense of loyalty and calm over time rather than boredom. But when emotional closeness repeatedly occurs with different partners, the pattern changes. The brain still releases the same chemicals, but the bond is repeatedly interrupted. Attachment forms, then disappears. Trust builds slightly, then collapses. Over time, the nervous system learns something unexpected. Attachment becomes associated with loss. And once the brain begins associating connection with eventual separation, it quietly alters its emotional defenses. Another powerful chemical enters the story here: dopamine. Dopamine is not the hormone of love. It is the hormone of anticipation and novelty. It rewards the excitement of something new, a new face, a new conversation, a new feeling of attraction. Every new romantic encounter can trigger this reward system in the brain, creating a burst of energy, curiosity, and emotional intensity. The problem is not dopamine itself. The problem is repetition. When novelty becomes the main source of emotional stimulation, the brain begins to depend on it. Stability then starts to feel strangely quiet in comparison. Not empty, but quieter than what the brain has been trained to expect. At this point, a subtle psychological shift can occur. Instead of feeling drawn to emotional security, a person may unconsciously seek situations that recreate intensity, uncertainty, pursuit, emotional tension. These states stimulate dopamine far more strongly than calm companionship. This is why some individuals, even when they genuinely want stability, find themselves drifting toward relationships that contain unpredictability. Their emotional system has been conditioned to interpret excitement as proof of connection. Modern psychological research has examined this phenomenon carefully. Studies discussed in the Journal of Sex Research, one of the respected academic journals studying relationship patterns, have explored the connection between a high number of past partners and lower levels of relationship satisfaction later in life. The pattern that appears repeatedly in the data is not about moral judgment. It is about emotional conditioning. The more often the attachment system is activated and then disrupted, the more difficult it can become for the brain to maintain deep, long-term emotional investment. Another major body of research from the American Psychological Association has explored how repeated short-term relationship cycles can influence dopamine reward pathways and attachment stability. These studies suggest that when novelty becomes the primary emotional reward, the brain may gradually struggle to feel the same excitement within steady relationships built on patience and loyalty. None of this means that people are permanently damaged. Human beings are remarkably capable of change, but it does explain why some individuals feel restless even when they finally enter a relationship that offers peace and stability. A curious pattern often appears later in life. After years of chaotic or unstable relationship cycles, many people eventually begin searching for something different. They want calm. They want respect. They want a partnership that is not constantly threatened by emotional storms. Yet, when they encounter that calm environment, they sometimes feel a strange internal conflict. The relationship may be healthy, but their nervous system has grown accustomed to emotional intensity rather than emotional depth. The difference between those two states is profound. Intensity is loud. Depth is quiet. Intensity produces adrenaline and sudden bursts of emotion. Depth produces trust, patience, and long-term stability. A person who has lived inside emotional intensity for many years may initially interpret calm relationships as lacking excitement. In reality, what they are experiencing is the unfamiliar rhythm of emotional safety. There is another psychological dimension that often emerges from repeated relationship cycles: comparison. When someone accumulates many experiences with different partners, the mind begins storing fragments of those experiences. One person was more charming, another was more adventurous, another was more financially successful, another more attentive. Later, when a new partner enters their life, the brain sometimes performs unconscious comparisons between all these past impressions. Instead of evaluating the new partner as a whole person, the mind measures them against a mental collage built from previous experiences. No real human being can compete with a composite image constructed from multiple memories. The result is subtle dissatisfaction, even when the present relationship is objectively healthy. This psychological trap explains why some individuals feel as if something is always missing, not because the relationship lacks value, but because comparison quietly erodes appreciation. Over time, however, many people begin to rediscover a profound truth about human connection. Real stability does not come from endless excitement. It comes from trust that grows slowly, from loyalty that is tested and proven, from two people who choose patience over impulse. When a relationship is built on commitment rather than constant novelty, the emotional system gradually recalibrates. The brain begins to experience a different form of reward, one that is deeper, calmer, and far more sustainable. In such relationships, intimacy strengthens rather than fragments the bond. Security replaces anxiety. Emotional energy that once chased fleeting excitement begins to invest itself in building a shared future. And this is where one of the most powerful realizations about human psychology appears. The human heart does not truly crave endless options. It craves meaning. It craves belonging. It craves a bond that grows stronger with time rather than weaker with repetition. Many people spend years searching for excitement before discovering that the deepest fulfillment comes from something much simpler: loyalty, respect, and a relationship built on responsibility rather than impulse. Those who understand this early protect themselves from years of emotional confusion, and those who understand it later often describe the realization as life-changing. Because once a person sees clearly how emotional patterns are formed, they gain something rare in the world of relationships: the ability to choose wisely rather than react impulsively. And that single ability can transform the entire direction of a person's emotional life. She's about to appear. Discover the secrets of the woman who never chases. Don't forget to like and subscribe.